Today we start off with the war in the Middle East, with Israel taking its very first steps into the southern tip of Lebanon as yet another chapter in the war now begins. Then I give a thumbs up to Florida's new law on the homeless, and it's been 29 years since the biggest acquittal in the history of the American justice system. This is the Bullock, so let's do it. The mainstream news is so corrupt.
This is unbelievable.
This is wild.
No one is talking about this.
The shootings are just out of control right now.
If you don't read the newspaper, you're uninformed. If you do read it, you're misinformed.
So The On-Brewing War is a book that keeps adding more and more chapters to it, which is not a good thing, and not looking like it's going to be ending anytime soon. So Israel took its first steps into Lebanon now, in its now regional fight to not only obtain all of their own hostages back, but to also eliminate the groups that have helped facilitate terror attacks against them for decades now. With entering Lebanon, Hezbollah has now officially also entered the chat. Now, let me explain a little bit here. So, Hezbollah is a U.S. designated foreign terrorist organization whose home base is in Lebanon. And it's also a militia that is fully backed by the state of Iran. You know, the United States BFF. Not. Hezbollah differs, though, from Hamas. You've heard a lot about Hamas in the last year. You're about to hear a lot about Hezbollah in the next year. The two groups do differ, as Hamas was created simply to provide an uprising directly against Israel for the Palestinian cause, in what the Palestinians deem as Israel's occupation of their own homeland. Hezbollah, on the other hand, operate more in a broader ideological sense, which works solely on expelling Western powers from the Middle East. What country is obviously in the crosshairs most then? Israel. Now, with Israel marching right into Lebanon to engage with Hezbollah directly, you might as well say they're engaging directly with Iran at this point, with Prime Minister of Israel, Netanyahu, even saying that the country is, quote-unquote, in the middle of a tough war against Iran's axis of evil, even though technically they've never gone head-to-head with Iran just yet this year. So far, we are less than a few days into the war spreading into Lebanon, and Israel has lost 8 soldiers so far, with the oldest soldier of these men being a mere 23 years old, and the youngest being 21 years old. So all 8 men who have died so far this week invading into Lebanon from Israel are between the ages of 21 and 23. These are basically, in the United States perspective, would be considered children still. Netanyahu continued to say, though, that they will retrieve their hostages back from both the north and from the south, which include the still 97 hostages that are listed as missing per the BBC reporting last month, and the hostages missing from last year's October 7th attack. Now, for the Lebanese people, this is the absolute worst case scenario for you over there. The last thing you want are the IDF soldiers marching right through your backyard, which is what is about to happen. The IDF are absolutely relentless when they have a target set in their sights. You can just ask the Palestinian leaders who helped orchestrate the Munich massacre at the 1972 Olympics. You could ask them if they were still around. The IDF chased them down and basically had their own Easter egg hunt all over Europe and throughout the Middle East, one by one over the following years, and created scenes right out of the movie Hitman, one by one of these guys. The operation was called the Wrath of God, which was set up in secret by Israel intelligence officers and was in response to the Palestinian terrorists that killed 11 Israeli athletes at the 1972 Olympics in Munich. Now, IDF spokesperson for Israel, Avichai Adrei, warned residents prior to the invasion. He warned 24 communities in southern Lebanon to evacuate Wednesday for their own safety. Quote unquote, Hezbollah's activities are forcing the IDF to act forcefully against it. The IDF does not intend to harm you, and therefore, for your safety, you must evacuate your homes immediately and head north of the Awali River. Save your lives, end quote, is what he said on Twitter, or X now. Continuing from his quote, anyone who is near Hezbollah members, installations, and combat equipment is putting his or her life at risk. Any home used by Hezbollah for its military needs is expected to be targeted, he also said. So, giving a complete warning prior to them invading, which is something you really don't see most of the time, which is also something you didn't see from Hamas when they invaded Israel on October 7th of 2023. So I think it's safe to say that the Middle East is probably the most unstable it's been since the attacks on 9/11, because Israel, like the U.S., will operate and occupy wherever it wants to for as long as it wants to if it feels it will protect its people. Now, heading into thumbs up and thumbs down, we start with a huge thumbs up to the state of Florida.
Thumbs up, average Joes can play.
Thumbs up goes to the state of Florida, who is doing everything they can to end homelessness. House Bill 1365, which finally just went into effect this week, now makes it illegal to sleep on public sidewalks, in public parks, on public beaches, or in any public space in the state. It should not be legal in any state to sleep in public spaces. It is a major health issue when you do. When you sleep on the sidewalk, next to a business, near a train station or a bus stop, or on the beach, or next to a school, it's not okay. Remind me again, what typically takes place when someone sleeps throughout the night? You're obviously completely susceptible and vulnerable to anything around you, but you also tend to drool, cough, yawn, scratch your armpits, your privates, you fart, you also walk 2 feet and go to the bathroom. All things that are completely the opposite of public health. So, thumbs up to Florida on this. Thank you for acting. And we're going to bop on over to the Condé Traveler magazine with a huge thumbs down here. A huge thumbs down to Condé Traveler magazine as it ranks Chicago as the best American big city. An absolutely abysmal opinion, as if you've watched this show in the past before, I spend a lot of time discussing the dozens of people shot in the city every single weekend. Not month, not year, weekend. I'm going to quote the magazine here on their decision, quote unquote, "It's no wonder Chicago is topping this list yet again. A world-class destination known for its impressive architecture, first-rate museums, brilliant chefs, and massive brewing scene. It'll take several repeat visits to get through your list of must-dos. Most people start downtown from the Magnificent Mile to the ritzy Gold Coast to funky old town, but there are 77 neighborhoods to explore where you'll find cutting-edge restaurants, chilled-out corner bars, and no matter where you go, some of the most pleasant people you'll find anywhere." And I'll quote that last part again. "And no matter where you go, some of the most pleasant people you'll find anywhere." And they encourage you also to explore all 77 neighborhoods, which must not be including Southside Chicago here. And pretending Southside Chicago doesn't exist when you make that statement of you should seek out all 77 neighborhoods is completely false and negligent on their reporting part, because they're just preying on the ignorance of their readers to not realize how ultimately false a statement is. This past weekend alone, from ABC 7 Chicago, reporting that over 20 people were shot, with 4 killed alone in that neighborhood. So huge thumbs down here. I would say San Diego, Dallas, Nashville. I could go on, Fort Lauderdale. I would go on and on about cities that could take the top spot over Chicago. That is asinine. You virtually leave out the biggest items that people think about when they hear the term Chicago, which is weekend shootings, which you're a travel magazine. When do people travel? Is on the weekends. So you're encouraging them to travel to Chicago when Chicago is the most susceptible for having shootings occur within it. Now, sometimes we don't realize just how quickly time has passed, which is why I bring you to this day in history.
Which specifies the unconditional surrender of Japan.
The president has been shot.
Today, 29 years ago in 1995, those 2 words, not guilty, rang around the world quicker than the first shot was heard around the world. O.J. Simpson was standing there listening to this, probably more shocked than anybody else on the planet at that very moment that he got away with killing his girlfriend, Nicole Simpson, and her friend, Ronald Goldman. An absolutely unbelievable outcome that still shakes people till this day. One of the most notorious injustices carried out in the public setting in the 20th century. A trial that would have ripple effects, as it was one of the first times a court case was live streamed on cable news with over 100 million people watching it, which is Super Bowl numbers. Also, disproving the myth that only white people can get away with murder, while also boosting the law careers of OJ's lawyers, most notably Robert Shapiro, Alan Dershowitz, and Robert Kardashian. Now, a lot of times covering the news can get nasty, very nasty. You're talking about a lot of bad things. So each news show, I will ensure that I do cover some good news out there, as it still does exist. In this hyper-polarized world we do live in, yes, there is still some good news. Very good things to harp on, so good news here we go. America's Got Talent may be one of the best shows that's still on television right now. And if you haven't watched the season finale, there's a man named Richard Goodall from Indiana who went from being the singing janitor at the school all the way to winning last week's America's Got Talent and even earning a golden buzzer for his performance of Don't Stop Believing. Now, I'd show you the full video if YouTube wouldn't slap a good old copyright infringement on my channel. So, go check his performances out, guys. A really awesome dude and an awesome story here. And remember, there is always some good news out there. You just have to look for it. Now, your daily news podcast, The Bullock, is out Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. on YouTube and any place where you get your podcast in audio form as well. I will be back here on Monday with another episode of The Bullock for your world news stories, and I will see you then.
News and factual material are deeply researched through confirming the validity of multiple sources by the broader media landscape across the global sector in the digital world. All statements are a combination of primary and secondary research components geared towards providing the only news show in video and podcast form that provides a clear understanding of important world issues that are being left out by the completely biased and politically driven global media machine. Thank you for listening.